God's chosen ones, the law of return destroys those who hurt you, whispered from heaven. They thought you'd break, but you became the storm they weren't ready to survive. They mocked your silence, but didn't realize silence is sacred when God is still writing. You didn't fight back. You didn't clap back. And yet, the thunder still found them, because there's a law written into the fabric of the universe, the law of return. What they threw at you now returns to sender, multiplied, merciless, divine. And if you've ever been attacked for just being who you are, if you've ever walked away, trembling, whispering, "Why me?" then this isn't just a message. It's heaven's announcement. Because if you're one of God's chosen, then this message was written in heaven with your name on it. Question. Quiet ones become dangerous. They never expected it to bounce back. They thought your silence meant surrender. That, because you didn't respond, nothing would respond. That because you didn't fight, heaven wouldn't either. But God doesn't forget what they threw. He records every whisper, every dagger disguised as a joke, every look meant to shame, every shadow war you had to fight with no army and no applause. Some of you were attacked in your own home by people who claimed to love you. Some of you were humiliated in the church, the very place you went to heal. Some of you were faithful friends, quiet co-workers, kind strangers, and still they came for you. Why? Because you're not like them. Because your peace disturbs their demons. Because your light exposes what they've tried to keep hidden. You never had to say a word. Your spirit entered the room before you did. And some spirits can't handle the presence of the chosen. They laughed when you lost. They whispered when you cried. They counted you out before the dust had even settled. But what they didn't count on was that God hears in silence. He moves in justice, and he returns in fullness. See, the law of return doesn't play favorites. It's not karma. It's not superstition. It's divine equilibrium. What they threw at you has a boomerang built into its DNA, and it's headed home with interest. If you've ever said, "Why did they come for me when I was minding my business? Why does my kindness always attract cruelty? Why do I feel punished when I've done nothing but love deeply and live honestly?" then stay with me, because what's about to unfold is not just revelation, it's your confirmation. Part 1. The mirror they couldn't escape. They hated you before they even knew your name. You could feel it, the shift in the room when you walked in, the sudden silence, the glances that lasted a little too long, the smiles that never reached their eyes. And the worst part? You hadn't done anything but exist. You thought maybe if you were quieter, kinder, less intense, maybe then they'd accept you. But nothing changed, because it wasn't your voice they feared. It was your presence. It was the truth you carried without even speaking. See, some people are walking lies, and your life is their mirror. A mirror that exposes every falsehood they've built their confidence on. They wanted you to apologize for being real. They needed you to shrink so their mask could feel safe. But you didn't. And that's when the attacks started. They whispered behind your back, not because you were doing wrong, but because you were doing right and doing it without needing attention. They called you arrogant because you didn't beg for their validation. Cold because you didn't break under pressure. Difficult because your stillness made them nervous. But what they didn't realize is that you weren't standing in silence. You were standing in fire and not burning. You were born with this frequency. It can't be imitated. It can't be dimmed. It can't be tolerated by those still living in the illusions you came to dismantle. You're not loud, you're clear. and clarity is a threat in a world addicted to confusion. So they threw shade, they spread rumors, they tried to label you, but all they did was prove the prophecy. Because only the chosen get targeted this early, this often, this violent, and still you didn't retaliate, you didn't collapse, you didn't become what tried to destroy you. You just kept walking, kept building, kept glowing, and that, it's here, because of that group will not last more than 20 minutes. The longest bomb makes no sound. It's the finishing tactic is prudent. To put it properly, you do not fight hate. It is unconditioned. Because heaven doesn't respond to noise, it responds to alignment. And yours was deafening. Part 2, the energy they sent is coming back. They didn't know the law was already in motion. Every word they whispered, every side glance, every trap they set in secret is all recorded, not by cameras, but by kingdom law, because the moment they aimed their bitterness at you, a chosen one, they initiated something irreversible, the law of return. You see, in this world, energy doesn't vanish. It echoes, it circles, it returns. The lies they told about you, they'll hear them told about themselves louder. The disrespect they masked as just being honest, they'll receive it unfiltered. The shame they tried to paint on your name is dripping on their own reflection now. But here's the thing. You didn't pray for revenge. You didn't ask God to get them back. He just kept showing up. You stayed humble. You stayed soft in a world that tried to harden you. That's what triggered the shift. Heaven saw your restraint. Your refusal to retaliate became your courtroom testimony. And the verdict? Approved. Now the very energy they tried to weaponize against you is on its way home. Not out of malice, not as punishment, but as divine calibration. Because what they gave is returning, multiplied. And let me tell you something sacred. God doesn't need to raise his voice to set things right. He just reroutes, quietly, perfectly, and with no return label required. Lately, you felt something shifting, not in chaos, but in clarity, not in battle, but in balance. You feel lighter because the burden they threw was never yours to carry. It was only passing through on its way back to sender. And you're not the target anymore. You're the proof. Part 3. Your stillness was the setup. They thought your silence meant surrender, but God was staging something. Because while they ran their mouths, while they gathered in secret circles to pray about you but never pray for you, while they called your absence weakness, heaven was repositioning the pieces. You weren't falling behind. You were being hidden, and hiding is never punishment for the chosen. It's preparation. That stillness you endured, those long, quiet seasons where no door opened, no one checked in, no favor seemed to find you real. It was the setup. Because silence in the spirit realm is never empty. It's full of blueprints. See, God knew what you didn't. Had he elevated you too soon, they would have had access to sabotage the promise. But by the time they hear your name again, they won't recognize the version God resurrected. You weren't still because you had nothing to say. You were still because you were under divine surgery. He was removing the need to be liked. He was extracting the root of rejection. He was rewiring your discernment, so next time you'd recognize the snake before the bite. And the ones who thought they had buried you in silence are about to hear the roar of your assignment. Because when chosen ones go quiet, heaven gets loud. Miracles multiply in stillness. Clarity sharpens in stillness. Power reconvenes in stillness. You stop talking not because you lost your fire, but because you were busy becoming the flame. So let them wonder. Let them scroll. Let them pretend they don't see what's rising. Because the stillness they mocked was the storm signal they ignored. And when God sends you forth this time, it won't be a whisper. It'll be a shift. Part 4. They marked you. Heaven sealed you. They tried to define you by the wound. She's too sensitive. It's too intense. They're just different. They gave you labels like weapons, marked you with gossip, tattooed your name on their judgment. But what they didn't know is that while they were marking you, heaven was sealing you. You were never called to be popular. You were called to be preserved. That rejection, it was protection in disguise. Those closed doors, vaults God refused to let you enter too soon. That isolation, it was insulation. Sacred wrapping for someone too holy to be handled by just anyone. You weren't overlooked. You were set apart. They saw brokenness. He saw blueprint. Event. They saw your past. He saw prophecy. They tried to erase you with rumors, but God wrote your purpose in unerasable ink. Chosen one, you carry something ancient, something not taught but transferred, and people can sense it before they can name it. That's why they stared. That's why they shifted. That's why they either clung to you like lifelines or ran from you like conviction. You weren't just marked by pain. You were sealed by promise. And there's a difference. Pain marks you in public, but sealing happens in secret. The seal is what held you together when no one was clapping, when betrayal dug deep, when depression tried to baptize your faith in silence. But here you are, still breathing, still believing, still becoming. That's what they can't explain. How you didn't crumble, how you still love, didn't show up, still glow. Is the mark may have come from man, but the seal, it came from God. And what God seals, no mouth can curse. No system can cancel, no lie can undo. You were never crazy. You were called, never too much. Just too chosen for small rooms. Part 5. The return doesn't knock. It crashes. They thought they got away with it. The betrayal, the manipulation, the way they watched you break and whispered, it's their fault. They thought the silence that followed was peace. But it wasn't peace. It was permission. God letting the rope run long enough for their own patterns to tie the knot. Because the law of return, it doesn't knock. It crashes like thunder behind closed doors, like truth at a funeral for lies, like a sword through every false alliance they built on your name. And when it hits, it's surgical, not messy, not emotional. One day they wake up, and everything they touched is crumbling, not because you cursed them, but because they touched what was sealed, and heaven doesn't play when it comes to what it anoints. Chosen ones don't have to clap back. They just stay in alignment. They just keep rising. They just let return handle what the flesh can't. You weren't crazy when you forgave them. You weren't weak when you'd expose them. You were wise because you knew the same God who watched you cry in private also watched them plot in the dark. And now, he's responding, not with noise, but with consequence, not with fire from your mouth, but with storms over their plans. Because energy doesn't, it circulates. The lies are circling. The manipulation is circling. The slander is circling. And you're not bitter. You're better. You're positioned. You're protected. You're watching the seeds they planted in cruelty bloom into thorns in their own garden. Not because you wanted it, but because heaven required it. And here's the most holy part. By the time they feel the full weight of the return, you won't even be near the battlefield. You'll be gone, elevated, untouchable. They'll look for someone to blame, but you'll be too far into purpose to hear the crash behind you, because chosen ones don't announce revenge. They embody redemption when heaven balances the scales. Maybe you were never meant to fight back. Maybe your silence wasn't surrender. It was a sanctuary. Maybe the pain wasn't punishment, but proof that what they did to you awakened what God placed in you. Because the return, it's already happening. You feel it, don't you? That subtle shift, the release of old burdens, the way your spirit no longer trembles in rooms that used to suffocate you. You're lighter now, not because they apologized, but because God vindicated you in a language only destiny understands. And here's what I came to tell you. They didn't get away with it. He got recorded. And heaven never forgets who it seals. So let them talk. Let them watch. Let them try to figure out how you're still standing, still glowing, still rising. Because the truth is, you're not where they left you. You're not who they hurt. You're not even reachable by the storm they once used to drown you. You are on the other side now, and when the law of return crashes, you'll hear the thunder, but you won't feel the rain, because chosen ones don't break. They resurrect. Maybe God didn't let you clap back, because he was preparing the echo. If the return comes without your help, and you stay holy enough not to touch it, if you're still standing after the betrayal, if you stayed silent and God still showed up, comment below. I didn't retaliate, I resurrected. And if this message felt like it was written for you, it was. Share it. Subscribe. Another chosen one is walking through their fire right now, and they need to know the return is already on the way.